So we're now keeping an eye on whether or not a South American crime ring is potentially involved and responsible for the burglaries at the homes of Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes from early October. Currie Myers is here, criminologist, and, of course, former Johnson County Sheriff on KCMO. All right, Currie, good morning. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and you said at the time you thought it was probably local, but what do you make of this new development that law enforcement could be looking at?
Well, there's more information that's come in. We're starting to see videos and still photography that's come in, and it's interesting to see that the suspects were wearing Tyvek outerwear, which is used a lot of times to help with contain contamination and try to eliminate or mitigate transfer of evidence. So we have to remember what's called Locard's principle of transference, which means that anything can be brought into a crime scene and anything can be taken out of. So with that level of sophistication, things change. They haven't arrested any individuals yet, so we have to kind of be a little careful of who is being involved. As I mentioned the last time, I still think there's a good chance that this information was given out because of workers that have been on location and on site in different areas. That's also very common with South American gangs. There's different types of groups that are active right now in the United States. This is all a direct reflection of our lack of border enforcement, by the way. But the Chilean burglary networks, Colombians, Peruvian, and Venezuelans in particular, the Chilean, it could be the Chileans, but this occurred in the evening and later hours. The Chilean method of operation seems to be renting high-class vehicles, showing up during the day, also using might be FedEx, something that looks like FedEx vehicles in order to do their work. This didn't seem to follow that methodology, but those things can kind of change over time as well. So I think the interesting part now is we are also seeing that was the stealing of jewelry. We already knew that there was 20,000 stolen. We didn't know what came out of the Mahomes house, but now I think we're seeing more information of jewelry. So certainly the South American gangs have been instrumental in a lot of crime that's going on, and they have a lot of financial abilities to shift what they steal and be able to get it back to their home countries through wire transfers, through cryptocurrency transfers, things like that.
So what do you look for, Currie, if you're in law enforcement, as you, of course, spent a career in, what is a telltale sign that you're looking for to determine whether or not this is, a bunch of punks in the Kansas City area, or if this is an organized international crime ring?
Well, I think the operational characteristics for more organized, and when we talked, I thought it was organized crime, but more regional, that had local people that was on the property that was giving information out to those, organized crime capabilities, but small coordinated teams, sophisticated surveillance methods. So they would have maybe even counter surveillance watching the location while they're committing the burglary. As I mentioned before, the use of rental vehicles is very common. It's usually nice rental vehicles, and the cross-jurisdictional activities. So you have to see if there's a pattern of behavior that's occurring not only in Kansas City, but across the United States. I think we're learning now that some athletes in different cities now have been targeted in particular. So that's interesting. And then their entry and exit tactics. We don't know a lot about their method of entry. When I first talked, it looked like there was damage to the door, so that may have been as a result of kicking in. So there could be potentially boot prints. There could be somebody could hurt themselves as they go through the door. So they're going to certainly go through the capabilities of crime scene and use DNA capabilities and technology to try to solve these cases. But the use of these Tyvek clothing, I think, is essential to show that they're highly sophisticated, and they go through some measures to try to prevent themselves from getting caught.
So this Tyvek clothing is stuff that will not leave any kind of evidence that you're on property. It won't leave any footprints. It won't leave any fingerprints and things like that.
Well, not necessarily fingerprints, but if they're wearing Tyvek, there's less of a chance of transference of skin. There's less of a transference of hair if they've got the Tyvek that's got the hoodies that are associated with it. So you can close yourself up a lot. I used Tyvek when I worked homicides. So if I went into a homicide scene, I would often get suited up in Tyveks to try to minimize cross-contamination into a crime scene. So that's not something that's uncommon to use. It can help with biologicals to keep that transference, but you would certainly have to wear Tyvek's booties as well as gloves to make sure that you have total. Try to have total control. You're never going to have 100% total control of transference of potential evidence, but it certainly helps. And I think that to me stands out the most significant indicator.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you look at this, and you alluded to it earlier, and we've talked a lot about it on the show this week, and that is, the border policies of the last few years. Not that international crime rings were not around, of course, in America before the last 4 years. They were. But I do wonder how much of the border policies of the last 4 years have emboldened these crime rings, these international crime rings, whether they're involved in these cases in the end or not, to be able to move more freely, get more bodies up here, make more sophisticated burglaries. How do you view that, Currie Myers?
Well, I think it's true, and I don't think these individuals are just where they're crossing the border through Mexico. I think we are seeing more direct flights into Mexico. If you go out to California, there are multiple daily flights that go in directly into Mexico, and they come into not only LAX and others, but smaller airports now. It is a significant amount of transfer of people back and forth into this country that's been allowed. I've never seen that level of coming into a country that's been kind of left uncontained. So we're seeing many areas where people are actually flying in daily routes back and forth. And if they're that sophisticated and are making that kind of money, and the ability to have wire transfers or go back to their home countries, because you have to have a way to fence these properties that have been stolen, of course, not necessarily money, but jewelry and other things. So they have to have a pretty sophisticated fencing operation. But it's an indicator in the South American gangs in particular. The ones that have been working during the day have gone into areas. They work a lot in areas where people only stay for the winter and then go back home for the summer. So they'll target those locations. Sometimes they'll pretend to be high-vac operators, people that work on the plumbers, and then they'll have sophisticated surveillance that will watch as they go into the house and steal everything and then come back out. So that's been extremely common. So this is turning into a very interesting case. There's no question about it. Yeah,
it certainly has taken quite a turn. Currie Myers, former Johnson County Sheriff, criminologist on KCMO Talk Radio. All right, so I got a minute, Currie. What are you watching next in this development on these cases, and what should we kind of keep an eye out for here?
Well, hopes that we'll have additional indicators from the forensic laboratories that are being used. Johnson County has one of the finest forensic laboratories in the country, quite frankly. They rival many. There's not too many sheriff's offices that have their own forensic capabilities. So we're going to see more and more information coming back from forensics. And I think eventually they're no doubt they're going to be looking and talking to individuals who have been on the property as contractors. I still think that's the number one way that they have gotten information to other people, is that there are people working on the property or coming into the property occasionally to work on things or mow or involved in cleaning, that have been given information to these gangs and are involved.
Well, we will be watching it. Currie Myers, thank you very much. Appreciate it, man.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks so much. You as well.